The Golden Man. I was walking alone to my car after a day at work that was way too long. When I sat in my seat, I got an uneasy feeling, like I was being watched. I look in the back seat and, not really to my surprise, it was empty, aside from dog hair. I checked my rearview mirrors and they were clear. I turned the key in the ignition and the piece of junk didn't start. Tried again, still nothing. As I was about to curse my car, something caught my eye in the rearview. It was something tall, at least 7 foot, and looked like it was made of pure gold. I looked back, but there was nothing there. I could feel my heart sink into my stomach and my body temperature quickly rise. I calmed myself down and just thought it was the meds I was taking for the frequent headaches I've been getting. I tried the ignition again and finally everything came on. I put it in reverse and slowly backed out, eyeing that spot where that thing was. Once I was clear to put it in drive, there it was again, now in front of the car. I jumped out of my seat and banged my head on the roof. That made my eyes close, and when I opened them again, there was nothing in front of me. I scanned the garage and quickly got out of there. My eyes instinctively moved to the interior rear view, and there it was, staring. When I got home, I tried to forget about what happened. I did my usual chores before I finally sat on the couch in the living room. My wife and kids were still coming from Granny's. I turned on the news and then I saw it. I saw it again next to the news anchor. The screen started to shake and have a staticky blur so I couldn't make out its features. I felt my heart pound and almost blow through my chest. It started to climb through the TV like something out of a horror movie, with its body still keeping the same staticky blur. I started to retreat to my room. I locked the door, turned on the light, and frantically searched for a Bible or a crucifix. Before I could find one, I saw it standing in my room looking at me. I could finally see it as clear as day. It was about 7 feet tall with a body that looked like a shadow. He was lanky and had piercing white eyes. I couldn't see a mouth. There was nowhere to run, so I did the one thing I could think to do. I swallowed the little bit of spit that was in my mouth and asked what it wanted. Then it motioned me to come here with its long and pointy finger that looked like a tree branch. I looked down and battled myself on if I should comply, but before I could decide for myself, I heard a creaky sound. It almost sounded like bones breaking. Then I saw his arm stretching towards me and I couldn't react before it grabbed me and yanked me forward. It held me in the air and its blinding white eyes sunk into its head and turned black. It placed its hand on my door and it turned into a golden light. He threw me in it and I fell through a golden void for about a minute before I hit the ground. I looked around. I said to myself, "Where am I?" It must have been late summer. The warm air and the cool breeze felt like that of heaven itself. All around me I saw grass and trees and foliage. It all carried a familiar scent, the sweet aroma of the freshly bloomed flowers that danced around with the smell of the bark. I got up and started to walk on the fluffy grass that slightly waved in the wind. It was like the world whispered to me, ordering me to remember. Remember what? I heard laughs behind me, more than one. I quickly turned to face them and I felt my heart sink. There were 4 people moving through the trees. 2 of them were small children, no older than 4. Behind them I saw a woman. It was my wife. Next to her I saw me. I was happy. In one hand I held hers, and in my other I held one of the children's shoulder. I told the little ones to go play, and they disappeared into the woods. I faced my wife and held her other hand. "We have to cherish moments like this," I said. "That's right. These are the golden days of our parenthood and their childhood," my wife told me. Her voice was just as beautiful as I remembered. The children called for us and we hopped over to them. Once we crossed a tree, we disappeared and the world around me changed into gold. Everything began to melt into liquid and I stood in a sea of liquid gold. With my mouth gaped, I spun to watch it unfold. Once I made a full 180, it stood before me yet again. Its eyes were white like they used to be, and he just stared. I stood my ground and met my eyes with his. His eyes sunk like before and took on their black color. The water around me started to circle like a cyclone and drag me down. I hollered for that golden man to set me free. What did he want? What have I done? Was he a punishment from God? Before I could blink, once again, I was in that golden void. As I fell, echoes of the past rang in my ears. Some were of happiness and comfort, like the sweet sounds of my wife's harmless giggles accompanied by the dog's barks and the exuberant sounds of our children. Some of the echoes were of anger and contention. Arguments started to fill the air. Some of the things I heard myself say, I began to strongly regret. All of the memories started to pile on top of each other until it was completely unintelligible. I put my hands on the sides of my head and screamed for them to stop again and again, but they got louder and louder and sliced their way into my ears like butter. Suddenly, all went silent, and I stopped falling and just began to float. I put my hands down and looked around. Not to my surprise, the golden man stood before me. Beautiful gold dust streamed off of his body and he slowly moved towards me. The dust was so plentiful and bright that I had to squint my eyes. I blinked and he went from being at least 20 yards away and was now right in front of me. I looked directly in his bright white eyes. He said nothing, but yet, I finally understood what he was and why he was here. He wasn't a monster or some kind of demon sent to deliver a sort of punishment. He was a representation of the past, my unwillingness to let go, all the good and all the bad, the golden days. He wasn't a punishment, he was a wake-up call. I began to lose control of my breathing and my heart rate got higher. He lifted his hand that was much cleaner than the last time and pushed me. I fell back and fell through another golden light, and the next thing I knew, my eyes opened. I was back home sitting on my couch. It felt different. The house even smelled different. Worse. I looked around and it was a mess. From top to bottom, it was trashed as if it hadn't been tended to in weeks. The only thing that was familiar was the dog who I saw laying on the floor fast asleep. Coffee table in front of me had a picture of me, my wife, and my kids. The best picture we'd ever taken. I slowly reached my hand out to grab it and brushed off the dust. For a moment, tears fell from my eyes seemingly endlessly and streamed down my face. I sniffed and did my best to pull back together my broken pieces. Then, I felt someone doing it for me. There was an overwhelming feeling of reverence, peace. It was like a soft hand touched my shoulder and wiped my tears. Before I knew it, all I could do was smile.